In today's video, we're going to talk about how you would keep track of access and who accesses the app and when they access it, as well as what pages they access. So if we take a look at our app, we're going to change the navigation of our app so that we have an admin center. And when we click this, we'll have our access permissions, which we did in a previous video. You can check out the video for how we did access permissions if you click the link here in the upper right-hand corner. And that'll kind of walk you through this. And I should also mention this is essentially the fourth video in the series. I'll put links in the description of this video for each of the previous videos. Now, if we click this access log, we'll be able to see all the information here. And as you can see here, the session ID is unique to the specific session. If we scroll down here, we'll see the new sessions for each time that I've opened this app. So essentially today, there's been 3 different access attempts to this application. And in this video, we're going to talk about how to set this up, as well as how to use this modern table control, as well as how to do the page navigation and get that working in this app as well. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. The first thing we need to do is create our SharePoint list that we're going to record all the access information into. So let's go to our SharePoint portal. Now in our SharePoint portal, let's go ahead and create a new list. And for this one, we'll go ahead and call it Project Request Intake Access Log. And again, we won't show it in the site navigation, and we'll hit Create. Now for the title column, we're just going to rename this one. And this will be our username. Then we'll add a column, and it'll be a text column. And this one's going to be our email, user email. And I'm going to use a single line of text. And let's go ahead and hit save. And then we'll just rename this quick to add a space. And then we'll add a comment. You might be wondering, why are we starting without a space, then we add a space? Why don't we just leave it in there with a space from the beginning? And how you work with Power Apps, it's easier if you don't have spaces for SharePoint sites. It gets rid of all the extra characters. It just makes working with them much easier. So that's why typically you'll want to start off with no spaces. That way the schema logical name of the column is whatever you set initially. And then you're not going to get these percents and these numbers that need to be added every time you have a space there. So my recommendation is always to start without a space. Let's go ahead and add a text column here. And this will be our page name. And again, that'll be a text column. And then we'll adjust this right away while we're at it. And let's go ahead and add another column for our access date. And in this case, we're going to go with the date time. And for this one, we're just going to use a date. So we're not going to include our time. And we're going to call it the access date. And we will go with the friendly format and hit save. Now let's go ahead and edit this. And again, we'll have our space in there. And you might be wondering, why don't you just use the created on date? And you can, and actually you have the option to always use your created on date, even with an access date. So you're not getting rid of one for the other. The benefit of using a date only column is that it lends itself a little bit better to avoiding delegation warnings, and doing count rows and things like that are a little bit easier with a date column versus a created on, which has date and time. So if you know you're going to have a lot of entries, because potentially this could very easily get into the thousands of entries very quickly, it's usually better to have text fields and then a little simpler version of a date field with just the date, not the time. And then we'll go ahead and add a session ID text. And what this is going to be is something we're going to set in the app, and it's going to record a session ID, which is going to basically apply to every page they view. So you'll be able to see when somebody accesses the app, how many different places they go in the app for that session. And let's go ahead and hit save. Now you could add other information in here, but I think this is probably a pretty good start for recording information about how people are using your apps. Let's go ahead and head back to our App Studio. Now in our App Studio, let's go ahead and add the data source. And let's add our SharePoint. And select it, and it's this one. And then we're going to look for our access log and hit connect. All right, so now we've got our data source in there. Let's go ahead and close this. Let's go back to our app settings, and let's go adjust our app. And let's go to our OnStart. And at the bottom of our OnStart, let's go ahead and create our session ID. And we're going to set a global variable, and we'll call it session ID. This is not the actual session ID for the app. This is just going to be some random unique identifier that's going to be created when the user opens the app up. And for that, all we have to do is type in GUID, and then we'll go ahead and close this off and then get ready for the next step. Now, every time you come into this app, it's going to create this unique ID. And what this is going to look like, let's go ahead and demo this quick. So we'll insert a text field, and we'll go ahead and set this to GBL session ID. And then we'll run our OnStart. And we're going to get this unique identifier created for every time somebody comes into our app. And every page that we navigate to, this is going to be recorded as part of that process. So you'll be able to break things down by sessions. So you might go to the app 3, 4, 5 different times during the course of a day. Each one of those is going to be its unique session. So you'll be able to see unique sessions for unique pages throughout the course of a day. Let's go ahead and delete this. We don't necessarily need that. And go back to our app OnStart here. All right, so that looks good. Now what we need to do is, you have a couple different options for recording information. We could actually put a patch statement right here in our OnStart if you want to record information every time somebody opens up your app. I think a better approach though is to just put it in the pages. That way you can record information about the actual pages. You could do this also in the OnStart for accessing the app, but it works just as well for going to the main screen here. And since we're going to put it on each page, if they take the direct link and go straight to the intake form, when that page loads, it's still going to record that information. So it's the same effect as if you put it in OnStart. If you put it in the OnStart and in the page, you're going to record 2 entries every time they go into the app, whether it's the main screen or the request form. So just keep that in mind. Where you put it does matter. If you put it in the OnStart, that could create some duplication depending on how your app is set up. The other thing about using the page, so if we select this page here and we go to the OnVisible property, if you're using your OnVisible property, depending on the setup of your app, you could actually trigger this multiple times. For example, if you've got navigation on your page here where you're completing a request and then you click a button and it takes you to another page to complete a different portion of that request, and when you're done with it, it takes you back to this page, that's going to log 2 entries for coming to this page. You may not want to do that. And in that case, what you might want to do is when you're clicking the buttons, you set the patch as part of the button. So you would select this button here and you would adjust the OnStart of this, and then you would adjust the OnSelect of this so that when you click the button, it actually creates that patch automatically. So your button control would essentially create the patches for when you're going page to page to page. It depends on your setup on what is the best approach. Either work, just be aware of how you set your app up and how many times you refresh that page. All of those refreshes are going to trigger another patch statement. So sometimes it is better to put it on the button. But for this particular app, it works great just having it on the page. So let's go ahead and select our main screen here. And on the OnVisible, what we're going to do is we're going to create a patch statement. So let's go ahead and create that. And in this case, it's going to be our access log. And then we'll put a comma. And we want to do defaults. So we'll go ahead and start with defaults. We're creating a new record, so defaults works great for this process. And then we'll go ahead and close this off, add a comma, and then we can actually do our update. And our update starts with a curly bracket. So let's go ahead and put our curly bracket in there. And let's hit enter. And our first thing is going to be our title. So let's select title. And for that, we're going to use our global variables that we created. So we'll go GBL user name. So we're just going to close this off so we can confirm that we don't have any strange errors or anything else that's popping up here. And as we can see here, we've got no errors, so this is loading correctly. Now, if you haven't watched the series on how we created this video, where I got GBL user name from, if we go back to our app OnStart, we created these here. So this is the process for how we created the username and the email. And all we did was use our user information, and then we created our user full name by using the coalesce feature here to find the email. And if it's not there, then it's going to be blank, but that sets these variables, making them available all throughout our app. All right, let's go back to our main screen here, and let's go ahead and add our next field. And for our next field, we're going to do our user email. And we're just going to use our global user email that we created. And we'll add a comma, and then we'll do our next item, and that'll be our page. And in this case, it'll be app.activescreen.name. And then for our next field, what we're going to do is our access date. And that's just going to be today. And then we're going to do our session ID. And for our session ID, it's just going to be our GBL session ID that we created. And as you can see, we've got no issues. Everything looks like it's working perfectly. All we need to do is copy this. So we'll copy this, and then we'll go to our request screen and adjust our OnVisible here and add that in there. And the beauty of using the app.activescreen.name is whatever screen we're on, it's going to put that in there. Now, if you didn't want that, let's just say that you don't want to use app.activescreen. Maybe you don't like the name that you came up with this. All we have to do is format it this way. So we'll just say request intake form, and that'll work just the same. So if you don't like the name of your screens, all you have to do is put it in there this way, and then it'll record it just like that. But I like dynamic content, so let's go with .activescreen.name. And then we'll do our permission center here and go to our OnVisible property here. And we'll add this to our page. All right, let's go ahead and check for errors. And we've got no issues. This performance issue is because we're not currently using this variable. And I typically leave this in there. You can have a little bit, almost insignificant improvement in your performance if you remove extra variables, depending on the complexity. This one's so basic that it's not really going to cause us any problems. And then I've always got the option to use this within my application. All right, let's go ahead and close this off. Now, one of the goals we've been trying to do in this channel is avoid using the SharePoint list. So let's go ahead and do the same inside of our app so we can access the access log from our app. Let's go ahead and duplicate this page. And let's go ahead and name this our access log. And we'll change our title here as well. So this would be access log. And let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. And for our main container, this is basically this entire container here. We really don't need any of this. So let's go ahead and delete this. And then we'll delete this. And if you get a bunch of issues like this, when you delete a lot of stuff like this, sometimes it has to refresh. So let's go back to our main screen here. And then we'll go back to our access log. And there we go. Everything's been reset back for us. Now, we're going to set up a very basic viewing for this. We're just going to use a table control. So we use table preview here. And we'll point it towards our access log. And let's go ahead and adjust our height. And we'll say parent.height. And then we'll do the same thing for our width. And we'll say parent.width. And let's go ahead and adjust our columns here so we don't need our created by. So now we've got our title, user email, page name, and access date. All right, let's go ahead and change this to table access log. And let's go ahead and select our title field here. And our field name, we're going to go ahead and change our header text. And for this, we're going to say username. There we go. So now we've got that adjusted. So we've got our username, our email, our page name, and our access date. Let's go ahead and select our table here. We want to enable sorting around range selections. We'll go ahead and do a multi-select also. All right, so now we're pretty much set up here. Now that we have this set up, we have to have a way to get here. So if we go back to our main screen, what we might want to do is change how people get here. So let's go ahead and create another page. So we'll duplicate our access log here. And for this, we're going to call it our admin center. And let's go ahead and get rid of this name, and we'll call this admin center here. And let's get rid of our table control. And again, let's just go back to our main screen and then come back here. And in here, what we're going to do is add some buttons. And let's go ahead and put a gap of 20, and then our top padding will be 20 also. And then let's put it in the center. And let's go ahead and make the size of this button a little bit bigger. So we'll select the button here, and we'll make this button a width of 140. And for this button, let's go ahead and call it our access permissions. And we'll go ahead and increase our height here to 42. All right, that looks pretty good. And for the icon, we can use the little person icon here, just like we do on our main page. So we can do this one, or we could hit the add people. I think add people makes sense. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now let's go ahead and make this a little bit wider. So go with 200. I think that looks pretty good. And we'll call this our button access permissions. And when we click this button, what do we have happen here? We want to navigate to our permission center, and we'll use cover right, just like that. All right, so let's go ahead and copy this, and we'll paste it. Now we want to change this. We want it to be in vertical. So let's go ahead and switch our gallery option here. We'll go with the vertical option, and then we'll center it again and put it at the top. All right, so now we have two buttons for access permissions. Let's go ahead and change this one to our access log. And we want this one to go to our access log screen. And if we go to our advanced here, we want to change our accessibility label to access log. And this one will be our access permissions, just like that. Now let's go back to our main screen here. We're going to change this to our settings. And for our accessibility label, let's go ahead and change this to admin center. So when we click this, we want it to take us to the admin center. So let's change this. And let's go to our OnVisible property here and copy this for the admin center also. And then we'll go to our page here and adjust our OnVisible settings here. Oh, since we duplicated it, it's already there, so we don't have to worry about that. It's convenient. Now, if we click on access permissions, it'll take us to our access permissions page. We might want this to be our home page, or we might want this to be our back page. Let's go ahead and go back. So we're going to do our settings again. And then let's go ahead and click our access log. And as you can see, we've already got quite a few entries in our access log from all the page navigation that we've been doing. Now, this is something to be aware of, is just in the time that I've been creating this, I've gone to the different pages about 12 times. Now, multiply that times multiple days, multiple users, maybe they're doing checks on the statuses. You could get to very easily thousands upon thousands of rows of data. But potentially you might want to consider deleting previous logs, maybe say keep 2 months or 3 months or a certain number of length of time, whatever makes the most sense for your app usage, and routinely purge the historical information just so that everything continues to work without any problems inside your app. And you can also do visualizations in Power BI that won't have any problems using large data sets with Power BI. But that is something to be aware of if you're going to build visualizations inside of here to say, show some graphs or some pie charts or something like that. You may have to purge some information out of here in order to display that, or filter it so you're only getting the last 30, 90 days, whatever makes sense based off your use case. Now let's go ahead and change this to our settings. All right, so if we click this, we'll go back to our settings page, and from our settings page, we can get back to our main page here. So everything's working the way that we want it to. Let's just confirm. All right. Let's go back to our admin here, and let's go ahead and change our icon for our access log. And our app list kind of looks like that, so we'll use that one here. All right, that looks good. Let's go ahead and click on our access log and take a look at our access log. And now that we're looking at our table here, there's one piece of information that we're missing. So let's go ahead and add our session ID on here. You don't have to do this. This is more for grouping purposes, but we can go ahead and add that also. So if we go ahead and navigate over, we have our session ID. So we can see that every single one of these is this current session here. This was created when I opened up the app, and that's what's being added here. And you can see that every entry has that information. Now that's the basic setup for an access log. Hopefully you found the content helpful. Don't forget, hit that like and subscribe button. That way this content gets to others that might find it helpful. Until next time.